Sanibona emakhaya, igama lami Scelo ngubane. I'm an inspirational speaker. Today we have our guest to speak about issues of youth development. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. Ngokwegama nguSiyabonga kaMsimango. I'm from Etwatwa CityCon. I'm passionate about youth development, and I believe in the heart of integrated youth development that society can only change when young people are at the center of everything. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. And we speak about youth development. Challenges of young people today. Young people are in Nyaupe. Young people are faced with teenage pregnancy. There's unemployment. The country is faced with so many challenges that when you are a young person today, you'll ask yourself what to do. Where do you think we need to fix the issues of youth development?
You have mentioned the issue of young people committing themselves to different substances that push them out of identifying themselves. I think the first thing that has to be done by society is to separate young people from their behavior.
Okay.
I think the moment we start seeing young people as who they are, complete outside of their behavior, we can be able to identify their gifts and talents, nurture them into that so that society can have active young people that can be able to change society.
So you're saying the diagnosis of young people today is that when we look at them, we want to classify them based on the behavior that the society see from them.
Yes.
But what would it take for us to reach that level where we can be able to look at young people not only from their behavior, but maybe look at the potential that they have? What needs to be done?
We have quite a lot of initiatives in South Africa that seek to develop and identify issues that may bring change in the lives of young people. But I think the biggest problem that we have in society is that those programs that seek to address the issues of young people do not involve young people. So the first thing that has to be done is to actively involve young people in whatever initiative or program that seeks to address the issues of young people. Because if young people are not at the center of those programs, you are just imposing.
Okay.
And if you impose, you won't have young people interested in taking part of those programs.
I sentiment with what you're saying, because even with elections, young people are not participating in the elections. But young people used to be actively involved in politics, around the issues of 1976. What do you think have transformed and changed?
I think the biggest challenge right now is that leadership in South Africa has reached a ceiling. People have become comfortable in positions that they have forgotten about handing over. So if you can look back, as you mentioned, on the 70s, during the 80s, you could see that older leaders at the time were pushing young people at the center of the struggle. We're pushing young people at the center of changing society.
Yes.
Because in as much as old people are needed, you need young people at the ground.
Okay.
Who will bring influence and impact in bringing about an active society. But now you find a society that is led by old people who also want to be at the ground. And once you become at the ground, you start to bring initiatives and programs that do not reflect the needs that young people have.
So the challenges that we're having is at the leadership level, because by what you're saying is that there's no handing over. We see our parliament, parliamentarians are very old. You look at government officials, they're very old. You look at everywhere in our society, we do not have young people at the center of development. Now, let's look at young people like us. Ekasi young people normally don't have positive role models, because everybody, whenever they get successful or deemed prosperous, they move away from the townships. Now, the only people who are roaming around the townships are normally people who are having really not positive role models to young people, people who live in crime and all of that. Now we see that behavior being reciprocal in the case, that most of the time people who are going to be available as role models to young people are really not positive role models. There is a vacuum of positive role models in Makas. What can we do to redeem that?
I think what is needed is political education, mostly at a high school level,
Okay.
because you're mentioning that when young people begin to progress, they leave townships. I think if they understood the demographics of the country, why we have suburbs, why we have townships, it can be easier for them not to identify themselves with places that do not deem black people as being well enough to live in.
Okay.
So, and those are the effects of the kind of system that we come from.
Okay.
Ukuthi, when you begin to progress, you de-associate yourself from the people that have pushed you to become who you are today. So I think if we can have that mentality of bringing back, of paying it forward, of reaching out, society can begin to change. So we do not have role models today because of that concept of wanting to identify yourself with something else of which you are not. But once you see yourself complete as you are as a young person within that township, you won't see a need to move out to feel completed somewhere else.
So you're saying political education. Is our history not covering our politics? Are you saying maybe that's not enough information there?
To be honest enough, say, I'm a teacher and I teach history. And with the kind of approach we receive when it comes to us having to teach, we do not teach active citizenship. We just give learners information for them to write and then pass. But once we change our method of education, it can be easier for young people to identify issues that affect them, that were systematically programmed for them to think the way they are. But once we move away from those methods of bringing young people at the center of teaching and learning, we are still going to continue having a society where young people are just fed information that does not change their lives.
So if Usimakhaya, you're asking yourself, how can we change the minds of young people? Usiabonga is saying, let's change our educational system. Let's bring a lot of context, especially when it comes to issues of politics, so that we can have active citizens. Every time, whenever there are local elections and also national elections, our young people are not participating. It could be because of information and the perception that they have about our history. Now, let's take it closer to home.
Yeah.
You work with young people in Mabandlen and you do programs in my churches. Young people are no longer active in church. What's wrong?
As I mentioned earlier, I think the reason why young people are losing heart, specifically towards the church, is that young people are not at the center of program implementation. Once you give a young person, and I'm talking from experience because I'm still a young person. Once you give a young person the responsibility to take over, they feel part of whatever vision. And it becomes easier for them to run with it. But if you come and impose, it becomes difficult for them to run. So young people are leaving the church not because they don't have interest, but because they are not given a platform for them to run whatever initiative that is given by the church.
They say, if you tell me, I might forget. If you show me, I might remember. But if you involve me, surely I'll always remember. So young people are not involved because when you look at decision making, the other time we're talking about young people at the governance level, that in South Africa, the challenge today is that we're not futuristic about, the programs. So what can be done maybe to ease the tension from young people? What is it that young people can do from themselves? Because I think we must not look at young people also as victims of circumstances because they're actively involved, because it doesn't mean when they are not involved in a church or involved in a positive program, they're not doing anything with their time. Then they go become involved in destructive behavior, what could be done by them? Because if adults are not giving power, you must take it.
Yes.
You cannot have this thing, no, you're not giving me power, so I'm running away. You need to fight because I think I agree with, is it Churchill who says each generation must always fight for their mission or betrayed. So I see a lot of young people, especially the younger generation today, really giving up on a fight for liberation.
Yeah. Firstly, I'd like to say young people are visionaries. Young people are innovators.
Okay.
If you can just give a young person a platform to showcase the talents, the gifts, the innovations, then it is easier for them to be actively involved in whatever program you'd like to see from young people. As we spoke about the fact that we are starting with integrated youth development, at the center of integrated youth development, there is a phenomenon that says young people are complete. Young people have gifts and talents. You don't have to search somewhere else for you to start using a young person. Identify what they have, use what they have
Wow.
to push whatever program or whatever program that you have for young people to have. So I think the issue of young people having to take power is there. Young people can take power at any time, and history tells us that if young people forget, young people will always take over. So young people must just move out of comfort, and the only way young people can move out of comfort is if we change the system, because it is the system that is pushing young people to a place where they are comfortable sitting.
Oh, wow. Now, one of the biggest challenges is that we don't involve young people in our leadership positions. Now, that frustrates young people because it means they don't take active participation. They say we may not build a bright future for young people, but we can build our young people for the brighter future. Now, we no longer have volunteers in organizations of young people, and there's a huge amount of unemployed youth in the country. And hence I was saying, I believe that our young people think that now that we're living in freedom, everything they're going to get for free. Where do you see them now conscientizing themselves? I mean, there's a lot of books that are written by Steve Biko. Yes. There's a lot of books. I mean, the history. We're going to June 16 now. We all know about Hector Peterson. We know about the struggle. And I really think that most of young people today do not want to give also sacrifice their time, to say, let me do something for the good cause. Is it because of our education, or also there's an element of ignorance?
I do believe that there's an element of ignorance. But as you mentioned, Steve Biko, as you mentioned that we are moving towards Youth Month, specifically, if we can start talking about Steve Biko says something that is powerful. Uguti, the most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So I think once we deal with the manner in which young people see themselves, we can be able to achieve anything.
I want to also add, because being exposed to international organizations that are working with young people, is that in any country, especially that is faced with psychosocial challenges, they always have a budget for youth programs. But in South Africa, you'll find organizations that are not funded. And you ask yourself, if you're dealing with critical youth development, children, why are you not getting funding? Where is the heart of this community? Are we futuristic, or we're just dealing with the now and that's it? And COVID has exposed us. I mean, we have escalated number of teenage pregnancy more than any other time in the country. Is it because of lack of leadership or lack of innovation? Because they are LRCs, they're still here. This structure is still here. The student movement are still here. What is it that the mind is challenged to? What is it that they're fighting? Because we don't see the fruits of that fight.
That's a very profound question, because as you're saying, we don't see the fruit of that fight. And as Steve Biko always says, the issue is in the mind. The issue is in the mind. And to see from education system up until you have a matric certificate, if you see the product of learners that our education system are bringing forth, we don't have independent thinkers. We don't have independent thinkers. Hence, I'm saying, in as much as we have young people who are visionaries, we have young people who are innovative, they don't have a platform for them to start implementing. And even if they are given that platform, it becomes difficult for them to implement because they are not independent thinkers. So for us to start seeing the fruits of that sacrifice, the fruits of that freedom, is when young people begin to implement at the heart of youth development programs for young people by young people.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one thing that I want to add, especially when it comes to issues of free thinking, is freedom.
Yeah.
Do we understand the freedom that we have? Are young people aware of the freedom that we have? So I want you to expand on what will be a free thinker in your own words.
A free thinker is someone who is not afraid to criticize
Okay.
and to be criticized, to see a world view bigger than yourself, understanding that we have people who have different views, people who have different opinions, people who have different experiences, and those views and experiences are not there to dismantle your opinions, but they are there to cultivate the way you think.
Okay.
Once you appreciate that there will always be someone who is different from what you believe, what you stand for, you will be able to begin to see the world in a different way.
Wow.
And once you see the world in a different way, different from how you see the world, it is easier for you to start thinking independently.
Wow. So you ask yourself, why do we have bullying in schools? Why do we have violence? Those things are really, I would say, tip of an iceberg. Young people, whenever they don't see unity, whenever we preach division and we preach about not, conscientizing each other about the history of where we come from, these are things that, will always come forth where we see young people intolerant of one another and not really respecting one another, because those are the fruits that we're gaining today. We see bullying in schools more than any other time. Now, also the respect of teachers. Today, teachers are no longer respected like in the 80s. What has changed?
We struggle as teachers. We struggle a lot in terms of behavior, in terms of different methods that we are given, in particular according to each school's policy on how to manage a classroom, on how to enforce discipline. The Constitution yethu has given absolute rights, in as much as they say they are not absolute, but young people have quite a lot of rights. And we are emphasizing rights outside of responsibilities. So we find ourselves in a very difficult position as teachers, because once you start to give out that responsibility that comes with the right, you are saying something foreign to the learners. And once you impose a responsibility, or once you teach a responsibility, they see it as an attack, because the only thing that they were taught were rights,
not
responsibilities. So umuntu mamtshela ngeresponsibility kuba ngathi uyamthusa. It's a heavy, it's a burden. But if we can go back and take each right with each responsibility, we won't find ourselves in a compromised position as teachers, in a threatened position as teachers, because we will know that we are dealing with people who know their responsibilities in line with their rights.
Oh, wow. Now, I believe young people at home who are watching this show are really inspired by the fact that you need to learn and observe the responsibilities, not about rights only, but it's about being responsible. We are given the freedom, but it's your responsibility to go and vote Nobody will come and vote for you. And unfortunately, those who are voting are actually voting on your behalf because we're only going to count the votes that are there. Young people must stand up because their silence is very loud when it comes to issues of politics. And what we're also challenging is a serious paradigm shift in terms of our political history that we are teaching, to say, let's teach more about, black consciousness. Let young people know about the sacrifices that the country have went through until where we are today. Now, you enjoy history. Why? Why history?
Um, History is at the center of our existence. Um, Someone once said, if you don't know your history, you are bound to repeat it. So I believe that it is through history that you are able to shape society, to learn from other people's mistakes, to learn from other people's experiences, so that we can know how we walk this journey of life. So the kind of history that I love specifically is South African history.
Okay.
Because at the center of our history as South Africans lies every other history that pertains the globe. My biggest role model with regards to our history is Steve Biko.
Okay.
Because Steve Biko has given us an ability as young people to think independently. As mentioned, Steve Biko once said a powerful statement that I believe in: if young people can run with, society can be changed. Can I put it in Zulu?
Yeah.
Uthi amandla omlungu asengcondweni yomuntu omnyama. So once you start seeing yourself outside of what society has defined, of what a system has defined, you can be able to challenge society. So in history, we emphasize that way of thinking. You must value yourself. You must see yourself complete. Learn from other young revolutionaries who have managed to change society. And if you can study history, you will see that the greatest revolutionaries that we have in the entire world were young people.
Yes.
Go and check about Che Guevara.
Yes.
Go and check about Joseph Stalin. Those
Yes.
people were young people who purposed in their hearts that they can be able to change society. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about history, to look back at other young people who were able to change young people and be able to bring that into a school system where there are young people, so that they can also see that they are better able to change society.
Oh, that's very powerful and profound, because one thing good about the example you've made of young people is that peer education is more powerful than any other, I would say, method of education, because when you are a peer, you can influence not only on the basis of dominance of age, but you can also be exemplary to your peers about what you are talking about. Now, we always speak about injustice in our society. Are we able to look at our injustice and fight it once and for all?
Yo. It's quite a difficult question, because we are a reactive society. We are always reacting. For example, we just spoke about the 22 million flag. We were reactive. But what happens after that? So for us to be able to fight every injustice, we have to plan. We have to prioritize ourselves. We have to be at the cutting edge of innovation and knowledge, to tell ourselves that even if nothing happens for now, we still fight.
Wow.
We still fight. We don't wait for something negative to come and attack us. We are always prepared. We are always taking action. Because the society in which we live, that is a society of reacting, is only giving us a balloon effect, where we have people going out to protest, after that they sit down. But we don't have everyday engagements to fight injustices that are affecting specifically people who live in townships.
Now, in the townships, we don't have big organizations like Abo Afri Forum to defend us. And that's why you find a lot of black people arrested, I will say, because of lack of justice in our society. Why is it difficult to organize black people? And why are we shying away that black people are not organized? Especially because apartheid was dividing black people. Why are we afraid to call a spade a spade? We're always calling it a garden tool. Why are we not saying it that Black people are scattered, black people are not organized. From the times of Malcolm X, we are still talking even today about black people's life, that they matter. If they really matter, why are we not seeing the change and transformation?
I once disagreed with a white friend of mine who said no black no young person who was born after 1994 must complain about apartheid because apartheid had long happened.
You see, for me, that is what really frustrates me, to say, why are we defending the past? Because the past is the past. Because if we do not tell the honest truth of what have transpired, then the injustice will continue.
And I responded to him by saying, in as much as we are a generation that did not experience apartheid, we are somehow living in the effects of apartheid. Sorry. The manner in which we think, the manner in which we're divided. We're not just divided according to our ethnic groups in townships, but in the manner in which we think. That is why we are still having the same problems that we had in the past. Ukuthi when Scelo ngubane has an issue with electricity, usiya because unayo igesi akasiboni isidingo sokuthi amsize. Why? Because of that divide and rule strategy that no longer comes in terms of politics, but that comes in terms of the way we think and economical. More right esikhwameni mina ngi-affecteki. Mangi-right endleleni engicabanga ngayo mina ngi-affecteki.
So this perpetuates the classism.
Exactly. So people are now looking at indaba ye divide and rule on the basis of the past apartheid. It's still there, but it has different ways of infiltrating a society through economics, through the way we think.
We need to look back and reflect as we're looking at the youth of 1976. What were their struggle? They were clear about who was their enemy. We need to ask young people of today, who's their enemy? I'm asking you as a young person of today, who's your enemy? Who are you fighting?
I think the biggest enemy is yourself.
Okay.
The biggest enemy is yourself. Once we all get to a place where we know who we are, it can be easier for us to come together. The biggest challenge that we have also is identity crisis. Once you start identifying yourself on the basis of material, you won't be able to relate to another human being. Once we see ourselves in our blackness as a generation, once we see ourselves in our uniqueness as young people, it can be easier for us to come together. Ukuthi into esihlanganisayo akusukuthi uhamba ngani, akusukuthi uphetheni, but ukuthi sonke simnyama, sonke siubumbano as a result of the color of our skin, as a result of the color of our blood. So identity crisis is what is dividing us right now.
We need to be patriotic. We need solidarity and cohesion in our society, especially because our black children are faced with so many challenges. And we can't shy away from the fact that as you look at Ikukura and KwaZulu-Natal, that the poor of the poor is still black. The problem in this country is that anything that is not developmental is black. It has a color. Multi-poverty, you're not talking about poverty of any other race. You're talking about black poverty. And young people must know that it's up to them to fight it. It's up to them to really challenge the status quo. Maybe your last words as we go to the Youth Month, what can you encourage and say as a teacher also to your peers and also to the learners, what can you say to them in the Youth Month?
What I can say to every young person is that you need to discover who you are. And there's nothing that is as powerful as someone who knows who they are. Once you discover who you are, you become unstoppable. And once you become unstoppable, you can be able to change yourself, change your family, then change society. So discover who you are.
He says the enemy is in you. You are your worst enemy. He says also that if you can discover yourself, you will be unstoppable. When you go for job interviews, the first question they say, tell us about yourself. So spend a lot of time with doing introspection. Spend a lot of time with positive people who are going to see the positive in you, affirming you and building you. And I hope as a young person, you're going to be challenged today to say, what are you fighting? What struggle are you joining in your society? Come clean a strat insane, cleaner in your community. That is also participation. Be a young person that is always showing up whenever you are called or your name is called. May God bless you and thank you very much.